Anyway, it's about to get underway. Everyone's heading to the seat. Looks like it's a good turnout. It's a right miserable day. It's been very, very snowy in the way up from Manning. It's very, very warm in here, so you don't need your cooler.
We're going to focus on the importance of grass to your farming business and the economic success of the Scottish farming industry as a whole that grass delivers. Many of you have come quite a distance to be here and have put the day aside to be here despite all the work at home that you have to attend to. And I'm very grateful, and particularly given I facetiously call it a spring conference. Charles was reminding me maybe it wasn't quite the term given the weather we've got this morning, but never mind. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You've all got a pen in your bags. If you could fill this form in, we've got a draw. So the winner gets 5 acres of free grass seed. I'm sure you and Dave would be desperate to have that at home. And second prize 3, and third prize 2, and also some of my fantastic whiskey in the offing as well. So vested interest, fill the thing in, and I think they'll be collected at lunchtime, and the draw will be announced at 3 o'clock on departure. So we've got, we've got 3 speakers, but before all that, I'm going to run a bit of a timeline through the day and start with the 18th century and here in Mill Lanark, because it was here in 1786 that David Dale built the Mill Lanark mills and all the housing for the workers that you see here that's been fully restored. Now this is a UNESCO heritage site. We've only 6 in Scotland, so this is a seriously important place in the history of the developments of the Industrial Revolution in Scotland. And of course, this was the period of the Enlightenment across Europe, and Scotland was at the focal point of this whole radical way of thinking. Basically, Dale built it, and then it fell to his son-in-law, the famous Robert Owen, who this route is named after, actually. And Robert Owen was a social reformer who believed in treating his workers well, provided an education for all the children of the workers, and his cotton mills thrived because his workers respected him. And this was an interesting, different way of dealing with how you treat your workers. So it was an industrial model that marked throughout Europe in its day. We're not here, of course, to talk about cotton, but I thought we should mark the presence of where we are. We're here to talk about grass and clover. But interestingly, at exactly the same year as the great Dale was building this vision for the future, there was a revolution going on in Scottish farming. We had a very important development, born really partly by all these wealthy lairds that went off to Europe for what they called the European tour in the time of the Enlightenment. They came back from the Low Countries, the Flemish Low Countries in particular, through Suffolk, came back home and thought they could set about transforming their farms in Scotland. For example, they ditched the old Scotch plough and brought in the Suffolk plough, which made life easier. But they were men that could afford the time to think, which would be a nice privilege for us who have to work so hard all the time. But these guys were very important, and particularly we make reference to the 6th Earl of Haddington, who brought clover seeds into Scottish rotation on his farms just along the road from where I live. So Haddington was quite inspirational, as was William Curtis. He was in England, and he wrote a very interesting group of essays. And this quotation I've known all my days selling grass seed to farmers. And one should take note of what that man was saying, because we still live in a time where we don't necessarily all do this. That much of our meadow and pasture land may be rendered infinitely more valuable than it is at present by the introduction of some of our best grasses is an opinion which has long prevailed among many of the more enlightened agriculturalists of the present age. And in this room we have men of that ilk. But out there in the farming world of Scotland, there are many men who are not really making the most of what this wonderful crop can do for them and their profitability of their farms. So that was Curtis in England. But as I said, the Earl of Haddington introduced clover seeds. And then we had 50 years of an explosion of grass and clover getting reseeded in Scotland. Haddington's contribution with the introduction of clover was summed up in the late 1790s by this quotation. If the machine will work. I can't even read it out because I haven't got it down here. Anyway, we can maybe come back to that. Things, of course, have moved on considerably since these days. And today we face very different challenges in the farming industry. But you could say that, in all honesty, we need something of a new revolution now in how we go about our farming if we're to meet the challenges of competing at the world stage, which is actually where we're now competing. And it's also really about getting back to the basics of soil management, feeding the soil properly, and making sure the grasses that your animals are eating are going to thrive and leave you with hopefully a bit of a profit. So today we'll hear from 3 grassland enthusiasts and how they see the benefits of grassland improvement in the challenging business environment you're all in, both in practical and scientific terms. I hope you find today enjoyable and informative. So rather than piling up all the questions and answers at the very end of the day, we're going to take questions from Robert's chat. Oh, here we go. Robert's chat after his talk, and then we'll move on to the next speaker, who is Mary, rather than having it all at the end, because you'll have forgotten everything Robert said by 3 o'clock. Okay, so I'd like to hand over to Robert Neill. Oh, incidentally, let's have a look at this. So this is Haddington's introduction to clover, was regarded amongst the first and will probably prove to be the most important and permanent of all improvements in modern husbandry. And somebody wrote out in 1790. And how true is that? Okay, over to Robert. Thank you very much. Robert was telling me he was speaking last week at a conference and the slide projector blew up right in front of the half of his presentation. At least it worked for half the...
Today I'm at Mill Lanark. Don't know the name of the river here, but there's quite a lot of water in it anyway. I've had snow on the way up from Manning. It's not been too bad, so it looks like it's going to be okay for going back home.
Creeping in, illuminates our skin.
And what that means is that the breeders, regardless of whether they come from Denmark, Holland, Wales, wherever, their varieties have to be put up against each other in an independent way of testing, which is great for the farmers. It's great for people like me who deal in the seed trade independently. You know, we're buying grass varieties from all the different breeders to put together for the mixtures. And we have an honest, open, independent way of picking A to B. It's a bit like picking a Hoover out of the Which magazine, would you like a Dyson or whatever, you know. It gives us this completely independent way of doing it. And I would wholeheartedly recommend that all of you who farm here, you make sure that you sit at the kitchen table with your, whoever you buy your grass seed from. It doesn't have to be from me, whoever it is, as long as they're contributing to this important scheme, this levy scheme. You should be looking at this book at your kitchen table and looking at all these varieties and how they stack up against each other on a list. And you should be able to say, I mean, I wouldn't think there's many folk in here would know exactly what's in all their grass seed mixtures. It's unlikely because it's full of variety names that come and go, and it's not a thing people focus on. But you should take the time to sit and have a wee look and say, well, why is that in the mixture, and why have I not got that one? And, you know, take a more sort of interest in it if you, because this information's all completely available for you. So that's an important thing. I think Mary's going to be touching on the recommended lists later on in her talk. Right.
There we go.
This is improvised jazz, not baroque.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Johnny, thank you very much. I feel a bit humble that Johnny's asked me to come and address you this morning. But farming, rejuvenating grassland is a bit like sex. It's a lot more fun doing it than talking about it. So what I'm going to do is run through a slideshow, give you a bit family history, where we are, where we came from, what we do, what we try to do. So you'll just have to bear with me. So in 1954, my grandfather owned an 85-acre holding, Moss Head, near Kilmarnock. He had 5 children, 3 sons. All the family wanted to be involved in agriculture, so he soon realised that 85 acres was not going to sustain 5 offspring. So they sold that farm and moved to a tenanted farm called Thorrington, which is 750 acres on Ford Neill Estate in North Northumberland. Now that shift, there's no footage of that shift, that train journey, which is really disappointing. But they hired a train from Kilmarnock with the dairy cows, 27 dairy cows, hens, sheep, machinery, everything was loaded onto that train in Kilmarnock station on the morning after milking of the ship. It took the journey of Kilmarnock, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Berwick-upon-Tweed, Cornhill, Mindrum station. And at Mindrum station there were lorries sitting waiting, railway lorries sitting waiting to unload the dairy cows off the train, which was the first animals to be unloaded, drove them 3 miles along the road straight into the buyer and milked again for evening milking, all in one day. And that, as I say, there's no footage of that. He had 3 sons and all wanting to farm. So in 1964, the oldest son, Robin, took a tenancy on Ford Neill Estate, Brankston Hill Farm, which is 415 acres. And then the youngest son, my Uncle Tom, took the tenancy on Howell Farm, which is 600 acres, and left my father on the home farm of Thorrington, who was the one that was really interested in the dairy cows. So in 1977, the 3 brothers all worked in partnership. They took over 6,000 acres, 4 farms on Boland Estate on a 7-year partnership tenancy. Unfortunately, the landlord there drunk himself into debt and the farms had to be sold, and Lord Litchfield bought that, and still is the present owner and run by Jock Suter, very ably by Jock, still doing well and thriving today. 1982, they bought Calaburn, which is 200 acres. 1983, I was the oldest son in the next generation. So I've got 2 brothers, the 3 of us in the next generation. So 1983, the year before I left school, they decided to split the business up. They didn't want cousins all coming back into the business and working. They wanted to split it up and everybody get on. So there was a 4-day evaluation at that point to split the business up. So in 1984, the year I left school. So left school, a bit of a think really, a teacher's nightmare, hated school, didn't go to college. So in 1984, we were fortunate to get Elmford and Rickfoot Farms on Elmford Estate. And my father said to me, "That's your education, Robert, get on with it." So with guidance from my grandfather and father, I travelled daily to these farms for about 8 years before I eventually moved up there. So 1,600 acres, a partnership tenancy, but over the time that I spent from 1984 to 2000, I had 3 landlords, no security. I got married, family came along and I wanted more security. But in the time of being there, in 1992, I took another 400 acres, which put me up to about 2,000 acres. In 1996, we bought Durham Farm, which is a neighbouring farm to Thorrington, where my parents stay now. And on that farm, 1,800 breeding ewes, which are lambing at the moment. Thorrington is a dairy farm with 250 British Friesian cows in that holding. And then in 2000, Upper Nisbet came up for let on Lothian Estates, which my wife Jacqueline and myself put an application in for, and we were fortunate to get the tenancy on Upper Nisbet. Upper Nisbet's on Lothian Estates, halfway between Kelso and Jedburgh. It's a modern, long duration tenancy now. We took over in May 2000, 433.37 hectares, and also rented another 70 acres of grass on a grass park basis on a neighbouring farm, so it's all ring fenced. Now Lothian Estates is a fantastic estate to be on, the best landlord I've had. They have 20,000 acres, it's owned by Lord and Lady Lothian. There's 40 holdings on that estate with 30 tenants. So in May 2000 we took over with 836 acres. November 2001 the neighbouring farmer retired, we got another 151 acres plus the farm buildings. Then in May 2007 another neighbour retired and we got another 97 acres, so that put us up to the 1,036 acres that we have now. So Upper Nisbet is run separately from Thorrington. They're in North Northumberland, we're in Scotland, so they're dealing with DEFRA, we're dealing with the Scottish office. But we do everything ourselves apart from silage work. That's the only operation that we do together. So with 2 full-time members of staff, we do work together as a family, but we're totally separate for silage, and I do quite a bit of contracting work on a neighbouring farm. We've all got our own equipment, combines, sprayers, ploughs, and as I said, the forage harvest is the only thing that we share. And I do contract work on a neighbouring farm with 400 acres of cereals for this neighbour. So in 2015, the cropping at Upper Nisbet was, as you can see there, the winter barley is grown for feed, for feeding the livestock enterprise. Winter wheat is grown on a seed contract and some sold for feed or biscuit making. Spring barley is all grown for malting and also some seed as well. So in 2000, we arrived at Upper Nisbet with 200 limousine cross Friesian cows. So the dairy cows at my brother's farm is the nucleus of my suckler herd. So all his breeding replacement heifers go to a limousine bull, which produces these black cows. So that's the main part of the breeding. I'm very pleased that he's stuck with the British Friesians and not went down the Holstein route. He has suffered milk output, but in my opinion he's got an easy care cow. Easy kept, vet bills are low, fertility's great in the British Friesian cows. They're just a good all-round cow. He had 14 bullocks away last week on a lorry which averaged 1,050 pounds. So he has got a byproduct that is worth a bit of money as well compared with the Holsteins. So we're calving spring, early summer. So I've got some figures here. We'll step back a year on the livestock enterprise. So last year, in 2015, we sold 263 prime cattle. That's prime heifers, prime steers, prime bulls, and prime cows. Everything is finished on the farm, no store. We're self-sufficient. Everything is finished on home-grown produce. So the average live weight of these animals was 610 kilos at £2.20 a kilo. They're all sold live, nothing's hung up. The average price per head was £1,345. So there's a total of 160.61 tonne of live weight of animal produced off the farm last year. And that's from 267 hectares of grass. So that worked out at 601 kilos per hectare on the grassland enterprise. So the cereal output on the farm for last year, 236 hectares of cereals grown. The yield, 2,139 tonne, which averaged 9.26 tonne an acre. For those of you that are still working in tons per acre, so spring oats, spring barley average 3.13, winter barley 3.82, winter wheat 4.36, and spring oats 3.65. And that is precise. We've got a weighbridge on the farm, which I'll come to on later in my presentation. So 2015, the total outputs, 2,139 tonne of cereals produced, 160.61 tonnes. Add that together with 2,299 tonne of produce produced on every hectare of the farm, which equates to 4.56 tonne of output per hectare on the farm. So the tenant farmer, I pay rent on every piece of ground on the farm, and I need output of every single acre, whether it's permanent grass, temporary grass, cereal, or whatever. So the grass management on the farm, normally we're sowing 30 to 40 hectares per year of TGRS, temporary grass, buying winter barley. Prior to reseeding grass, winter barley, if you go back to the old scheme when we had set aside and all the rest of it, we were sowing our set aside with temporary grass. The temporary grass is my break crop. It's got a very big part to play in the arable rotation. 3 years, 4 years of temporary grass, 3-4 years of cereals, and then back into grass. And we're also in the process of reclaiming all the permanent grassland on the farm. Well, that's taken in the form of lifting stones. So I talked about production on every acre of land on Upper Nisbet. The stones are probably the most fertile and great breeders because they keep coming to the surface. So we need to decide. We decide which field we're going to reclaim. We set about lifting all the stones. Now in the wartime this land was broken in, but they were obviously breaking it in with horse and carts or great wagons and small trailers. So all the small stones were lifted and led to the perimeter of the field and just dumped. And all these big stones, obviously they didn't have the mechanical means to lift these big stones, so they were all left. So now these are all at the surface, we're digging them all out, loading them and leaving them off. Plus, we've led all the small stones away as well and put them onto a central point with a riddling bucket in the dump trailer. So that's the first part of the process, and there is some big ones over there that take a bit of handling. So you can see in the wartime why they left all these stones. So that was the field last year in 2014 that we reclaimed, and that was it back into young grass. This is 2015 now, so we'll burn the permanent grass off, lift the stones, disc, and sow kale on it. And then we winter yearling heifers, wean heifers on the kale over the winter field. This was a photograph last week. There's 120 heifers in that batch. We move the wire daily. They're getting straw as well. They were on concentrates, but they're now weaned off the concentrate, so they're only on a straw mineral kale diet. And they're doing a really good job of munching up, breaking up, chopping up the land, the old turf that's there. So, in the whole process, this is the kale field this year. This was Tom Case was in and took some pictures with the drone over the summer period. So this is the field that we did 2 years ago. This is preparing it back to for grassland. Lime is a big part to play. When we took over Upper Nisbet, the average pH of the whole farm is 5.1. So we've spent an absolute fortune on lime. We were using manganese lime, but we're now changed over. Manganese levels are quite high, so we're now started using calcium lime, and that's what's been there. Now, I'll say one thing, the younger generation in here, my grandfather said one thing to me, and I always remember what he said. He said, "Robert, look after the soil, and it will look after you in later life." And that is so true. Look after the soil, because that is the only thing we have got. We cannot create any more soil in the land, so the youngsters look after it, feed it, and it will look after you. And that goes for P and K, pH, organic manure, farmyard manure, produce as much as you can, because that's what I've done and fed the land in Israel. Over the last 16 years, from when I went to Upper Nisbet, the first harvest of a spring barley averaged 1.1 tonne an acre. And that was just through neglect. My previous farm, I took everything out and put nothing back in. You've got to look after that soil structure. So, yeah, it's a lot of hard work lifting all these stones, clearing these fields, but that's what we're left with. And that's permanent land, not arable land. And I'm paying the same rent for that land as I'm paying for the arable land, so I've got to make it produce. So this is us sowing Dundas grass seeds with an Opico grass harrow once all the work has been done. And we've lost a lot of sweat and a lot of skin on the knuckles lifting these stones and doing things, but it's rewarding. So the next year, following on from the reseed, that's what you end up with. Hopefully that's what you end up with. This is Dundas with heifers and calves grazing. And I love a lot of clover in my mixtures because we are really looking at input costs, looking at nitrogen, and if we can have a higher clover content in these swards and reduce fertiliser input, it's obviously going to help my back pocket. And you know that's something. Work with Johnny, work with whoever you work with. Get the health of the soil right, and then the next step is choose a grass mixture or grass seed that is going to suit your job, whether it is a short term or a long term lay. So speak to these guys. And that's the type of animal I'm trying to breed. As I said, we finish everything on the farm. All limousine bulls used with a bit of blue blood in there. We're selling 52 weeks of the year to the butcher market. That's in Boswell's 4 up to 5 animals per week, and taking them right through. And that's what we're aiming to produce. And again, just another shot of cows and calves. My cows are not the biggest. You know, we're all getting pushed at the moment for weight at abattoirs, reduced weights. My cows are not the biggest, 650 to 700 kilos. I've been through the winter. They're not massive. 800 kilo cows take a lot more grub than a 600 kilo cow. So again, it's all about costs and reducing these costs through the winter. The winter is the most expensive period keeping these cows. So yes, 40 acres of permanent land broken and reclaimed over the last 2 years, 4,000 tonne of stone. So it's a byproduct. You've got to do something with it. But that heap there last year was the most profitable thing I did in the farm. Lifting these stones, crushed it, and I had a product to sell, and I've sold them all off the farm. So these are just shots. That's an expensive operation. It's £1,000 a day, but you can put somewhere about 1,000 tonnes per day through that machine in an 8-hour, 9-hour working day. So it works out about £1 a tonne to crush that and have a product that you can use. So every building, every shed we've built on the farm, every roadway has been repaired, and I'm now at a stage of selling this product off the farm. So 1976 was the first year that the family, my father and his 2 brothers, put silage pits in, started to make silage. So this is just some clips of old machinery in the late 70s of how we did the operation. And this is us today in the present format. One self-propelled forage harvester between the business, and I said this is the only machine that we share. We work together at silage because you need so many tractors, operators, machines. So we start out with Thorrington for the dairy herd and make better quality silage for the milking cows. Get silage done down there, and then we move to Upper Nisbet and make silage for the beef enterprise, where quality is maybe not as crucial, but you still need to make quality for that, because the better the silage, the better the quality, the less feed they need through the winter period. But it doesn't always work out that way, just depending on weather and the climate we've got here in Scotland. So I said before about these yields. In 2011 we invested in the farm and built a 3,000 tonne grain store with dryer, wet bay, automatic, computerised, all fills that shed with overhead conveyors and a weigh bridge. So it's precision farming. It's not guesstimates. We're all good at guesstimating trail loads and weight. It's precise, precision. And because of doing this contract work in this 400-acre neighbouring farm, all his grain comes to Upper Nisbet and is dried and stored in that store. So we need to have a wet weight going in, so he's charged drying on a wet weight, and then when the grain comes out the shed, he's charged the storage on the dry weight. So it's weighed twice just to keep the books balanced. And that was 2011 we invested in that shed. So you've done all this reseeding, rejuvenation, the grass productions went up, you're grazing these swards. You need to know what your reaping off is, and the only way beef and sheep farmers can do that is to weigh. And you've got to weigh cattle on turnout halfway through the season if you want, or when they come back in, so you know the daily live weight gain of these animals. I'm not fortunate. I have got a brother milking cows, but on a daily basis he can look at his computer, look at the milk jars and look at the yields that these cows are producing, and look and see if his ration or grass sward is ticking the boxes. We're not as fortunate as that, so the only way that we can measure is weight, and if you don't measure, you cannot monitor and you cannot check your performance through. Right, I'll have to go here. So a little video here of, you don't need a setup like this, but this is my setup at home. What we do, so this is cattle coming back in off the grass, checking their weight. They're all electronically tagged, so the panel on the side of the crusher scans the tag, goes to this computer on the wall. It gives you daily live weight gains, the last time you weighed it, tags, readings is all there on that screen for you. All done automatically. The hardest job I've got is just to stand there, but poor hand gets a bit sore standing. We need the screen valve down a bit. It's a hydraulic crush I've imported that from New Zealand, driven by a pump in the workshop. It makes working with cattle enjoyable and not a chore. So there you go, 1.21 kilos a day, that one done there. It makes working with cattle enjoyable. You can weigh 30 or 40 cattle in 10 minutes, no problem. That was done 1.37. And then if you're drawing cattle for the market, you can weigh them, and I've invented and made all this equipment and stuff, apart from the crush, has been made on the farm. With a good workshop and a good team of men there that like welding and manufacturing. So these gates are operated by air operated rams, and I've got a switch at the side of me, and I can flick it back and forward and shed cattle into whatever pen I like. So if I'm weighing cattle for the market and I've got a dedicated 600 kilos, that's what the butcher's like. I can put the 600 kilo animals into one pen and put the rest in the other pen and put it back into the shed. And I think, as I say, it's safe as well. You're not actually physically in beside the cattle with a stick shedding out, jumping in, jumping out, people getting knocked over, which does happen. All the information is recorded in that box. There's an app on my phone, iPhone, which syncs with the box, all uploaded on my phone, and then I hit a button and send it to myself through an email. That's in the office when I go back, and I can put it into Cattle Master, Farm Plan, and crunch numbers. So once you've got it into the program, then you can start to select bulls, look at bulls progeny, see how they're doing, daily live weight gain, see if the EBVs tell the truth. There's just so much information you can do there with this information and system. And as I say, it is precision farming in the livestock industry. We need to do it. Also, administering drugs, it's precision. You're not overdosing, you're not underdosing, so you're not wasting money. You're getting the best performance out of your drugs that you're administering to your livestock. And I would say that the livestock industry has been left behind a bit, on the precision bit, but we are catching up. There is a lot of stuff out there for us to use and help our businesses to take them forward. Here's just some stats. It says itself, ladies and gentlemen, no farms, no food, no future. We have got a good future, and in my opinion, the future is bright. It maybe doesn't seem it at the moment with payments, single farm payments, government, computer systems, all of that seems a bit crap at the moment, but I think it will come right, in my opinion. So, one little last video that Tom Kidd was there on Monday, and I hope it's working. Flew a drone over the whole farm and took some aerial shots of the whole setup. So there we've got grain store, silage pit, looking up to the farm here, and all this land around here is on the south facing side.
What height you got to, Robert?
500 feet to the top of the farm. At the farm road end where the side is, we're at 190 feet and lower. So it's Upper Nisbet, but it's not that high. So the farm that I came from, the lowest point was 600 feet and we went to 1200 feet. We're now at, in round figures, 200 feet is the lowest point, the highest point is 500. So there's a big culture change. We've certainly got a lot longer growing season at Upper Nisbet to the last farm. All these cottages here are sold off. Grain store, these cottages belong to the farm. Silage pit, cattle shed. But you can see there's another shot where he goes to the top of the farm and looks to the north side. The difference between north and south facing on Monday. Going back to rejuvenation, that field here is 2.5 hectares. And that field was grading more livestock than the 10 hectare field down here that we have kale in it 2 years ago. After that one had been reseeded, heads per field. And so to me that didn't stack up. So at that point I decided that I really had to reclaim these permanent fields because we were not getting the goods, out of this permanent grass. We're very lucky that most of the fields are 40 acres, the average size I think is 38 acres on 39 fields. The good big fields, so we don't split fields, we don't fence off fields during the grazing period. Stock is, it's set stock at about 1700 kilos per hectare, so 3.5 to 4 yearling heifers per hectare, or 1.5, 1 3/4 per acre. And my aim is for these yearling heifers to do 1 kilo a day at grass. And these are the yearling heifers that are actually on the kale at the moment. So they go from the kale, silage, straw based ration. Come in, they'll probably get a worm or something, we'll check to see if they need any worms. So there's the difference between the north facing land and the south over the front. So they go from the kale and the straw ration straight onto temporary grass fields, and hopefully we're going to get 1 kilo a day daily live weight gain out of these heifers at grass till they come in and then go into the finishing ration and then off the farm. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Robert. Average field size 40 acres, that's the aim of a lot of people in here, I think. I meant to mention that Robert did win the UK Beef Farmer of the Year competition. We have a celebrated Dairy Farmer of the Year coming to speak this afternoon. You don't win these things if you're not showing a sufficient degree of attention to detail. And it's interesting when you visit Robert, he's always very delighted to tell me exactly which fields are delivering animal performance to satisfaction, because he can tell you how many kilos per hectare of live weight gain field A is delivering compared with field B, and that helps his judgment on what's to be reseeded or not. And I think one of the messages we all can hopefully absorb today is this, painful as it sounds, all this measuring, which is a complete bore and hassle for a lot of folk, especially people like me who's not really interested in that kind of stuff. I did 14 soil test fields the other day, and I thought, God almighty, what a day. But anyway, it's all well worth doing. If you listen to Angela, who's speaking at lunchtime, Angela Weston, she's got all this extraordinary plate measuring kit, and that's another subject to come on to. But Robert's doing it differently. He's actually measuring the weight of the animals before they go on the field, and then measuring the weight of them when they come off. And he has an exact kilo weight gain figure. As you say, it helps evaluate what he's doing right or what he's doing wrong. And we're all, I think it's about 6 times in the last fortnight I've heard that cliche, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I think it was mentioned in the People's Monitor Farm, and it seems to be the great mantra of the day. But actually doing it is a whole different subject. Anyway, the floor now, questions for Robert.
Robert, you mentioned that you were doing set stocking. If you're calving in the spring, what age you're putting these cows and calves out, and then you're keeping them for the next year? You'll be creep feeding them during the spring and right through summer. What do you do the next year? Do you rely on them just purely grass, or do you still keep them going on? I mean, over a kilo of grass or weight gain is relatively high without anything else. I'm not saying grass is not wonderful, but beef cattle have a tendency to go round in a circle and no graze, the same as dairy cows.
Yeah, and yes, spring calving, we normally put creeps out 1st of July to all the calves, cows and calves at that point. And in November, when we wean, whether it's October, November or the beginning of December is irrelevant. We decide on conditions at that point when we will wean these cows and calves. So at that point, all the steer calves and bull calves are housed off their mother and go into a TMR with a high content of cereal input into that TMR. And we're selling bulls and steers, which really start selling at 13 months is the youngest, and we'll go to 24 months. And that's how we can get a year-round supply of producing beef for butchers with just a spring calving herd. So yeah, we start selling steers and bulls at 13 months, but the heifer calves are weaned off those cows and go onto the kale at that point in November, and they're strip grazed for the winter period. And that is one thing that I picked up. I didn't say that. I was fortunate enough in 2013 to get an upfield scholarship study. So I had spent about 3 weeks in Canada and looked at their systems, and they haven't got the infrastructure that we've got here in Scotland. Although they've got a drier climate, it's very cold. And their cattle are hardy and live out in all conditions, and I thought, to me, it's time that we started doing some of that and reducing our costs through the winter period. So that's when I really kind of started to think about reclaiming land, growing kale. One thing I didn't say was I am thinking of sowing some oats next year in with the kale, just for something different, just to try and make it a little bit drier, because kale's high water content. I don't know whether that will work. So these heifers strip graze this kale until it runs out, basically March, April. Hopefully we'll have it, we'll put up to the end of April. And at that point, the heifers will come in and they'll be split maybe 3 ways. So breeding stock that is being kept will go a different way. Finishing stock will go on to young grass that's been put in behind winter barley, and set stock for the summer period. And then come in probably September time and then go into a finishing ration. So heifers are sold off the farms probably from 18 months to 24 months, whereas the steers are pushed harder at a younger age, and that gives us a supply of beef 12 months of the year. And it's just about targeting different grades of stock on different rations, different grassland and management purposes for taking them through a 12-month period. And the thing that I like to do is, these butchers that I'm supplying, they're small butchers, and a lot of them only want one animal a week, but they want one animal a week 52 weeks of the year. So there's no point me having 40 or 50 animals ready in 1 week to take the whole lot into the market. They need to come in dribs and drabs, and these butchers will pay a premium for that animal. They're still prepared to dictate if it is the correct conformation, the correct weight.
you.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Robert. Fantastic presentation. Fantastic enthusiasm for you, coming from how you farm up in Nisbet. A few years since I was last there, but the drone shots there were excellent. What I didn't see was, and I thought that was the saviour of the modern day beef farmer, was www.workingwivesandwindmills. I didn't see any renewables there. But, are you involved in any of these diversification projects or such like? I saw a lot of woodland also in the shots. Are you involved? Do you do anything like that or not?
No, because I'm a tenant farmer, well, I didn't say either that I was a climate change focused farmer for 3 years, and we looked at renewables. And now, if you went on the government website, renewables were being pushed. We had enough wind on the top of the farm for payback, but I didn't believe it. So we put up our own anemometer, if that's the correct word, and measured the wind for a 12-month period, and we went nowhere near what the target was. We were less than half of what the government said on the website. You know, and it was these sales guys coming in, oh yeah, you'll get payback, no problem, they just want you to sign the dotted line and pay a check. But I was apprehensive, so I'm quite pleased that I haven't went down that route. But because of being a tenant, I don't own the land, so it's more difficult for me to go into renewables. We have nothing to do with the woodland. That's kept in-house. The state have got their own forestry team and shooting enterprise, so that's kept in-house. So I am just basically the farm land. But yes, I have got a working wife who goes out and works. It's involved in IT, so hence drones, videos, PowerPoint presentation, that's how it all comes together.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, any more questions for Robert? We'll maybe do a final questions and answers at the very end when we've got the time. But thank you very much, Robert. I've known Robert all his farming days, from the early days of LM4, and his dedication and appetite to the industry and his work ethic is a thing which we should all greatly respect. And I did visit Upper Nisbet the first week he rang me, and we had a look round it, and there was more couch growing than barley in these fields. And it's unbelievable how that's been turned round in the time you've done it. Thank you, Robert. In the uptake of sowing grass and clover in Scotland. But if we speed ourselves forward to the early years of the 20th century, you get to the world of the great George Stapleton at Aberystwyth, who was a pioneering breeder. Some of you will remember S24, S23 varieties. Plant breeding really started to happen, and it was a time when a number of smaller companies around Britain, including the business that my grandfather was involved with, McGill & Smith in the old days in Ayr. He was doing a lot of work himself with his colleague Beckett McGill, and this was done right from the 20s onward. And so this work was really quite important in the day. He was breeding ryegrasses and cocksfoot, but of course this was before the Plant Royalty Act of 1964, which brought in the benefit of royalties. And royalties were something different when you suddenly started breeding grasses. Because if you could breed a grass variety that was used not just by your own farmers mixing it for your own the benefit of your customers, but it started to unravel into Europe, then there was serious revenue in the offing. So this is what really changed the whole nature of the grass seed breeding world, and the whole impetus for getting a lot of money in behind grass breeding. This is my grandfather that we're just about to see, and his work that he was doing in the 20s. So what happened with the grass breeding was that it created a whole stimulation for investment and companies amalgamating and joining up, and it became something beyond the reach of the smaller kind of business because of the advances in funding that was required and use all this new sophisticated technology. So really, I mean, when it comes to the plant breeding thing, I think I should leave that to Mary to talk about, because she works for Germinal, and they're one of the most reputable seed houses heavily involved in the marketing of leading grass varieties, and they do have the rights to grab and market all this material out of Aberystwyth. Some of their varieties are the top varieties we could possibly hope to use in our mixtures. There are other breeders out there, yes there are, but Germinal are an excellent business. I'm very proud that I've dealt with the Gilbert family and my family for now 3 generations, and that's quite unusual in modern agriculture, that we've got this relationship with the Gilbert family, who are the major shareholders of Germinal. So this is my grandfather here with the big hat on in his plots at Alloway Mill. And Ian Eadie's here. Where's Ian? Ian's in the back there, the back row. Ian and I worked at Alloway Mill over 40 years ago, working these bloody plots, going them night and day. But we had a lot of fun too. And that's Alloway Mill, where Robert Burns was at school, incidentally. So this is in the 20s. So look how dapper the farmers were in those days. Big bunnets. So I'm very proud of my grandfather and what he tried to do and achieve. Of course, it was well before royalty, so there wasn't really a fortune made out of this. But he was trying to better the mixtures for his customers. And that's really what it all counts for, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I'd like to introduce Mary. And Mary, from an Irish perspective, is going to give us our take on the grass seed scene. Our Irish cousins have a unique perspective to grassland management and production that we can undoubtedly learn a lot from. Dr. McAvoy worked for 6 years as a grassland researcher for Chegas, Moore Park, where her research interests included grass variety testing, the effect of variety and sward type on animal performance, and the new pasture profit index, which she will explain to you. In 2014, she joined Germinal. That was a smart move getting her on board, I would say. And she'll demonstrate and discuss the importance of measuring grass growth and describe the pasture profit index, an interesting development in grass variety evaluation in Ireland that ranks varieties in economic terms to simplify the selection for mixtures. We don't have this over here yet. I'm very enlightened. I'm interested in what this work's all about. It's a work in progress. We don't have the whole chapter and verse of this science yet, but we should celebrate, embrace the journey, and see where it takes us as seed merchants selecting varieties, and in particular the work done in Ireland with Mary. So I welcome Mary. Thank you very much.